All right, Nuggets fans, welcome into Pickaxe and Roll, brought to you by our good friends over at Bet Online. I am your host, Ryan Blackburn at NBA Blackburn on Twitter, part of the Mile High Sports Podcast Network. Very excited to talk about last night's game again. Well, okay, I'm not going to lie to you. Last night's game versus the Utah Jazz was mostly important because of the pregame festivities. It was because Denver won. It was because Nikola Jokic hit a crazy shot. Lots of good things happened from the game. I won't lie, but it wasn't like this massively interesting fest, and that's why you play 82, because sometimes you just have games like this, and that's fine. We'll talk about it. We'll go briefly into that one. Probably spend about 15 minutes on the game itself, and then I'm going to pivot into a conversation about standings. We'll get into this section of the screen in just a little bit, but given that we are just 7 games away from the end of the Denver Nuggets regular season, it's time to just start really discussing where they're going to fall, where they're going to be, who they're going to face, and try to break some of that down as best as we can. But before we get into that, want to thank the sponsor of today's show, Bet Online. You know them well and good. They are the number one source for everything online betting in 2025. And they're your number one source for betting on all the madness. Even if your bracket is busted, Bet Online has more ways to stay in on the action with a free Sweet 16 bracket. Obviously, hope you got in on that one. Live betting every remaining tournament game with the largest selection of odds on everything from college basketball to MLB, NHL, and MMA. BetOnline continues to be your number one sports betting source. Make sure to check them out. BetOnline, the game starts here. All right, once again, I'm your host, Ryan Blackburn. Thank you so much for tuning into the show. Hit that like button if you enjoy. Hit that subscribe button. Would really, really appreciate it. Let's get into the flow of things here. Denver wins last night's game. I had to check to see what the final score was. 129-93, I believe, was the final score. A pretty impressive number for the Nuggets. They rolled in that fourth quarter as the Jazz basically kind of let go of the rope. This game was close for much of the first half, or relatively close. It was one of those kind of fake close games where one team says, "Hey, we're in this thing," and the other team says, "Okay, are you sure you want to stay in this game?" And then the Jazz, who are tanking for Cooper Flag, said, "No, we do not want to be in this game." They did not play well. 17 turnovers for the Jazz. They shot 7 of 40 from 3 as a team, 17%. Shot 35% from the field. I don't think Denver's defense had some good moments. I want to make that clear. 12 steals, 13 blocks. There were some good things that they did. But I really do think the gap here was mostly on the Jazz. It was mostly on how bad they were. And just not a surprise to me that they really, really struggled. It's going to be interesting to see whether the Jazz actually get Cooper Flag, because that team is horrible. At least the version of the team that's playing right now that doesn't have Lauri Markkanen. Walker Kessler sat out. John Collins didn't play. There's a variety of other guys that didn't play, including Jordan Clarkson. But even when they are fully healthy, that Jazz team isn't great. So Denver, they did the right thing. They took advantage. Jamal Murray did not play, and probably the right case for him not to play. Peyton Watson started in his place, played 27 minutes, was a plus 26. Didn't shoot the ball from outside as well as you'd want him to, but did everything else extremely well. 8 points, 5 rebounds, 4 assists, 3 blocks, 1 steal. Interesting way for Denver to play this game. Usually in these situations, they go with Russell Westbrook as the starter in place of a Jamal Murray, but I'm glad they didn't. And it's not really about Russell Westbrook. It's just about the Nuggets trying to figure out what they can do heading into the playoffs. They know that they can go to Russell Westbrook with the bench or with the starters. That's not a question at this point of the season. So I'm glad that Michael Malone and the Nuggets coaching staff trying to answer some questions. And Peyton Watson has answered the bell over the course of these last few games. We're going to get into that in just a bit. But the Nuggets definitely played a good game overall on both ends of the floor. They didn't shoot the ball particularly well, and they got a little bit sloppy at times. Not going to say that they didn't, but it just didn't matter because they were relentless. They were attacking the rim on a consistent basis. The Utah Jazz were starting Oscar Tshiebwe, who's a great rebounder, and Kyle Filipowski, who had a good game. But those guys are still too small and still not big enough to contend with a guy like Jokic on the interior, but also the back cuts and the constant rim pressure that the Nuggets were putting on with Christian Brown, with Michael Porter, with Aaron Gordon, with Peyton Watson, and anybody that came in off the bench as well. Was really, really impressed with the way that Denver played in this one. Not necessarily, like, again, you have to factor in how bad the Jazz are, but you can also just be happy and just see that Denver got to play Jokic only 32 minutes in this game as opposed to 38 or 40 or whatever the number that he usually plays. Jokic in this game, 32 minutes, 27 points, 14 rebounds, 6 assists, 4 steals, was a dynamic player on both ends of the floor. Didn't shoot the 3 ball as well as you would hope, except for, well, the one that we all expected him to hit, the Euro step from 62 feet. That's a crazy number, and just kind of who he is at this point. We had a really good angle on it at the arena where Denver's up 7 heading into the half, and Jokic catches the ball with about 4 seconds left to go. He takes one dribble and Euro steps around, I believe, Colin Sexton, and shoots the ball with about 2 seconds left to go. And we're like, he had a lot more time than that. And then he just drains it. One foot, one-handed, drains it. Euro step, 60 feet. That's who he is. That's just what he does. This is technically his second heave that he has made this year, but it's actually his third because there's one that happened against the Atlanta Hawks. It was actually the game after the Washington Wizards debacle on the road back in December. The next day, he dominated, just killed the Atlanta Hawks. And the final play before the half in that one, he made a shot from about 48 feet with about 0.1 seconds remaining on the clock. So technically it didn't count in the stats in terms of being a heave, but it really is his third long distance shot that he's hit this year. He's been taking them with absolute reckless abandon. He doesn't care about the 3-point percentage. He doesn't care about anything regarding that. He just wants to get the final shot up and see how many of those he can make this year. And it's been awesome. Like it's a really cool wrinkle. And it started with the one where he decided to bat the ball 85 feet down the floor and he got kind of close to making it, but not really. But the fact that it was even in the general vicinity when he just batted the ball with about 0.2 seconds, 0.3 seconds remaining on the clock was insane. And he's been doing it ever since. And that's just who he is. That's the kind of player he is he doesn't care about the numbers. He just cares about trying to be successful, winning, and doing whatever the team needs. And in those moments, he feels like the team needs to get a good shot or as good of a shot as you could possibly get. And anytime the Jokic has the ball from beyond 40 feet, like it's going to be like Steph Curry for the opposing team. They're going to have to guard him. They're just going to have to respect it because you just never know. And if he gets that opportunity in the playoffs, I'm going to predict that he makes one. Like, I think that he has a good feel for it. He wants to take it. He's just in a good rhythm with those kinds of shots. And like predicting that he's going to get one of those in the playoffs is insane, but he does finish every quarter, basically. Like he finishes the first quarter, and then he finishes the half, and then he finishes the third quarter probably not going to happen in a fourth quarter situation, but he does finish each of the first three quarters based off of his rotation. So he'll be out there. The question is whether he's going to get an opportunity. And I bet he's going to take at least like 5, 6, 7 of them in the playoffs. So we'll see if he can make one. I think that would be like, my mind goes to Steph Curry making the 3-quarter court shot against the Memphis Grizzlies back in, I think, 2015, where it just flipped the momentum of that series. The fact that he made that shot and then it basically deflated Memphis at that point. So 10 years later, maybe Jokic can do something similar. That'd be pretty cool. Other guys that played pretty well, I will say, we'll talk about Peyton in just a bit. Michael Porter Jr., I thought, played pretty well. 20 points, 4 rebounds, 4 assists, 4 blocks. He was really going after the ball in transition. He was protecting the rim, doing a really good job. He was very competitive in those situations, which against the Utah Jazz, you don't usually see. You don't usually expect. So I think he saw an opportunity for himself to make an impact on the glass, make an impact on rim protection, and just found himself in some opportunities and made the best of it. He's out of this slump. He shot 6 of 8 from 3, I believe, in the last game. He's 4 of 7 now. Just back to being Michael Porter. And hopefully that can continue against some better teams in tougher situations. Obviously, when you're facing tougher opponents, you're going to be getting tougher shots and fewer opportunities. So we'll see what happens against Minnesota on Tuesday. That will be his next big test. I believe the Jokic will have 27, 14, and 6, about what he's had in this game. The real question is whether other guys can maintain, and we'll find out about Michael Porter. We'll see. Christian Braun, like I mentioned, pretty good game for him. 16, 4, 2, 1 steal. He attacked in transition. He was effectively, like, not really the point guard, but Denver just basically shared the ball out, and Jokic touched the ball pretty much every possession. The fact that he only finished with 6 assists, by the way, is absurd. There were some crazy passes that Jokic threw and probably should have finished with 10, if I'm being honest. One of them went through Zeke Naji's hands in terms of a dunk opportunity. One of them, no, I won't point out too many of these, but like, there were some opportunities that were missed by Denver, and they could have gone up by more. There were some missed layups, things like that. But it happens. Not a big deal. Yeah, but Christian did a nice job. He finished in transition a lot. He finished on the back cuts a lot. He was just lurking around the rim for much of this game. 0 of 1 from 3. There are times where he takes a bunch of threes and times where he just refuses to take them. He actually committed a travel in this game. The only turnover that he had was because he passed up a 3 and then slid his pivot foot while he was trying to drive. So, like, that needs to definitely change. Like, that definitely needs to change. He has to be willing to take these shots, even if it's not ideal, even if it's not perfect, because the playoffs are just not going to be perfect. He's never going to be in rhythm. Just going to have to put it up because of the work that he's done on his 3-pointer over the course of the last 3 years. So we'll see. We'll see what he does. Aaron Gordon, low usage game, 26 minutes, 6, 5, and 5, 2 of 4 from the field, 1 of 2 from 3, 1 of 4 from the free throw line. Last game he was out of rhythm because of foul trouble. This game kind of out of rhythm because he didn't get many opportunities. So I'm curious to see whether Denver can kind of get back to him against the Wolves. He didn't play, or he didn't start in each of the last 2 Wolves games. So I'm curious to see what he looks like against Julius Randle. Curious to see how the Nuggets can sort of change that feeling and change the impact there with Gordon specifically. But if he can play, if he can be functional and dynamic and doing some of those things to take pressure off of Murray and Porter specifically, then We'll have plenty of time to talk about that because I'm going to do another show on Monday in prep for Tuesday's game. Final couple things. Good defensive game from Zeke Naji, 2 steals, 3 blocks, has plenty of opportunities. Actually, good offensive game for him. 3 of 3 from the field, 2 of 2 from 3, 2 of 2 from the free throw line, plus 14 in this game. DeAndre Jordan above the rim doing his thing. Fantastic stuff from him, as always. Russell Westbrook, thought he was okay. The numbers will point to you and say 17.7 assists. He did have 3 steals and was hustling. There are plenty of opportunities where Russ made some really good plays, but also some odd decisions and some odd passes. I thought he was pretty wild with the passing. And again, 6 turnovers will point to that. So he has to get that reined in before the playoffs. I know that some of the chances that he takes are good for the team, and just being able to get the ball into a place that nobody else can get it, especially when Jokic is the one on the receiving end, is a really great idea. But some of the passes have gotten too wild, and I'm very curious to see when teams are scouting the kinds of passes that he likes to throw in the playoffs, is he going to be able to find the same angles, the same impact, and doing some of those same things? I don't know. I want to have and give them the benefit of the doubt there, but we'll just have to wait and see. We'll have to figure it out. I'm hopeful that he continues to go downhill and get to the rim and get to the corners and doing the things that he was extremely successful doing in December and January. But it has been, I would say, a rougher February and March for Russell Westbrook. Nothing else really notable from this one. Jalen Pickett didn't get a ton of touches. That was, nothing really notable. So Denver gets this win. Utah sucked. They were a horrible basketball team, and just trying to figure out how much to care about this, how much to put into this one in terms of stock. Not sure. But still nice for Denver to have a relatively straightforward win. It's not something that they have often. All right. When we come back, we are going to discuss playoff scenarios. Actually, I need to go over Peyton Watson first, but we will do that on the other side when we come back here on Pickaxe and Roll. All right, back at it, Pickaxe and Roll. Thank you so much for tuning into the show. Hit that like button, hit that subscribe button. Would really, really appreciate it. Really quickly, this podcast, as you know, it's also brought to you by good folks over at SCL Mortgage, who are fantastic at what they do. A great mortgage company that you can trust. If you're looking for a mortgage loan but are self-employed, if you want to get a new home and you need a down payment, if you're looking for a second mortgage on your home, make sure to contact our friends over at SCL Mortgage. Call 303-790-2222 or visit myspecialmortgage.com. Thank you to them for sponsoring today's podcast. All right. Peyton Watson. He was on the thumbnail for today's podcast, and he continues to grow. Over the course of these last few games, it has felt like Watson is back to finding the groove that he's supposed to find. And I've been pretty impressed with how he's handled himself. There are some things that kind of give me pause at times, just in terms of he very much believes in himself. That is very clear based off of how he plays, what he's looking at, and how he's just sort of operating. But he believes in himself, and he should. I'm not sitting here to say that he shouldn't. Basically, since he came back from the long-term the knee injury that he had, he's played 14 games. The early part of that, it was definitely pretty clear. Like the loss to Washington, he was really bad in that one. Did have a couple blocks, did have a steal, but I just remember him being extremely uncomfortable and not really finding his spots, not really finding his place. But then he started against the Golden State Warriors on that road trip, and I feel like so he had played 7 games up until that point. Now in his last 7 games, he is averaging 12.9 points, 5.0 rebounds, 1.7 assists, and 2.4 blocks in that stretch, shooting 56% from the field, 44% from 3, and only 52% from the line. Like, he still needs to get that free throw back up and into form, but it does feel like he's turned a little bit of a corner as somebody who has figured out where he needs to be on the floor, what he's supposed to be doing. Looking at these field goal percentage numbers and the amount of involvement that he has had in the game. In the first 7 games when he came back, he took 4 shots, 7, 1, 7, 4, 5, 3. In these last 7 games, because I'm really good at math, he has shot 8, 8, 11, 8, 12, 8, 9. Just more involvement, playing more, obviously. It's not that much higher of a usage rate in general, but he does look like he is getting himself more involved and the team is looking for him a little bit more. The consistency is a lot better. And that's something that Michael Malone has noted consistently, especially with young players. You just need to be consistent. I'm looking for like a lot of that is just coming from opportunities. And so he's found those opportunities. He has found those minutes. He has earned them by playing hard on the defensive end. And he's also figuring out how to impact things on the offensive end a little bit more. So I like what I've seen. I think that he has, there's still some things that he's got to work on, of course. He's still very raw, still trying to figure things out. He even said it himself in the post game last night. Like, he had this moment of realization with Julian Strawther while they were watching the tournament. Some of those guys are still older than him. Some of those guys are growing, they've got big ass muscles and facial hair. And Peyton is still in that stage of his life where he's trying to get to that place and he hasn't gotten there yet. So it's important to remember that in this conversation, Peyton is still so young. He looks it, he plays it sometimes. He's 22 years old. He's still got so much time to become a better version of himself, the best version of himself. And it's why the Nuggets, when you are a team like Denver, that you kind of have your ceiling capped a little bit because you've got a whole bunch of veterans. You're trying to figure out exactly what you're looking for. It's why committing to a guy like Peyton Watson is very valuable, because he could absolutely play and be an impact player in the playoffs, but only if you give him an opportunity to do so, and only if you set him up in a situation where he has some confidence. So I'm curious to see what it looks like. CT Fazio in the comments says, I hope to see Malone use that starting lineup in games when everyone is fully healthy. Jamal coming off the bench for you. Interesting. Okay. All right. we know where CT stands on Jamal, and then the Jamal slander. Wow. Just shaky. No, I know you're not necessarily saying that, but just to be able to get to that group, to be able to get to that unit. It reminds me a lot of the Bruce Brown, KCP, Michael Porter, Aaron Gordon, Jokic lineups, where you've got 3 strong defenders around Michael Porter and Jokic. And having those opportunities and being bigger and athletic and versatile and finding those opportunities is very, very important. So looking forward to seeing if they can make that happen on a more consistent basis. And I think CT's right. I think you got to find opportunities where you have an advantage. And I just think that, I've said this since the All-Star break, that the only way that I can really see Denver being successful in the playoffs this year is if they commit to Peyton Watson and if they commit to size, if they commit to their athleticism, their physicality, 100%. All right. Playoff time. I showed this to you guys at the beginning of the show. Denver right now is in a very interesting position. They are 47-28, third in the Western Conference, and they've got a little bit of a gap here because, as you can see, the Lakers are fourth, 44-29, tied with the Grizzlies, who just fired their coach at 44-29. Lots of weird things going on. I'm curious to see what happens with the standings over the course of these next few weeks. It's only actually a couple weeks at this point. But OKC's locked in. You can see the lock if you're looking at the screen. If you're watching this or if you're listening on the audio side, sorry, I've put up a graphic here that shows the standings, that shows the remaining schedule, and it shows Denver's magic numbers for the rest of the year. But OKC is locked in. They are going to be the 1 seed. They will face the 8 seed. The teams in the play-in tournament currently are Golden State at 7, Minnesota at 8, Sacramento at 9, and Dallas somehow at 10. They might be able to sneak in, by the way, and it would be really funny if they did. So if Denver stays at 3 and Minnesota stays in the play-in tournament, that's definitely Denver's best first-round situation. Because I think that Denver can beat anybody other than maybe OKC and other than maybe Minnesota. I think that they'd compete with the Lakers. I think I'd probably pick the Lakers right now over them. But like that's more of just the trying to have healthy respect, trying to be objective in this situation. Can Denver beat the Lakers in a playoff series? Yes, of course they can. Will it actually happen? I don't know. There's a small rat dog that is screaming outside of my apartment window right now. So hopefully you can hear that and are wondering what the hell is going on, because that is what that is. That's funny. Okay, so Denver, obviously, they could get up to the 2 seed. And if they did get up to the 2 seed, that would be interesting. Minnesota, for what it's worth, as they are in they're 42-32. They are just a half game back, but 1 loss back of the 6th seed. They have an opportunity to pass the Clippers and the Warriors. The Nuggets could stop that, and if they just beat the Timberwolves and kind of put them into a situation where they are climbing uphill trying to get into that top 6. But I don't really know how Denver should handle their remaining schedule. Like if they are trying to shift things around and avoid the T-Wolves, it just kind of feels like to me that no matter how you slice it, no matter how you look at the remaining schedule for Denver, the standings, whatever, it's going to come down to the final game, the final 2 games for every team in the NBA to then kind of look up and say, okay, what do we really want? What do we really want from this situation? For Denver, their final 7 games are Minnesota, San Antonio, Golden State, Indiana, Sacramento, Memphis, and Houston. 4 or 5 of those teams are in the current Western Conference playoff picture. Houston's at 2, Minnesota's at 8, Golden State's at 7, Sacramento's at 9, Memphis is at 5. Denver's played all their games against OKC, the Lakers, the Clippers, etc. So they can manipulate this thing if they want to. They have like a whole bunch of opportunities to manipulate the standings if they so choose, especially in that game 82. They might decide, hey, we want to win in that game 82 against Houston and try to push them down to a 3 seed or try to push somebody else above Houston or whoever. If Denver really wants to be above Memphis, then they could really gun for that game. If they don't care, then they might sit that game and say, hey, we're fine being a 3 seed or a 4 seed and don't have to get up to the 2. But there are so many different ways that these standings can still go. Denver's got a relatively tough schedule. It's not like super tough. I think the Rockets have a tougher schedule. The Lakers have a tougher schedule. And so Denver has an opportunity to jump up to the 2 seed if they so choose, if they want to. They may not want to, though. Magic numbers in the bottom left corner of this graphic. Denver's magic number for the playoffs is 4. It's technically 5, but because the Warriors and the Clippers, I believe, they face each other in a game, so one of those teams is going to take another loss. So I believe that the number is 4. Denver already has the tiebreaker over Golden State. They only play them 3 times and they've beaten them twice. The Clippers, they're 2-2 against the Clippers, but Denver has a better conference record against the Clippers. So I think they've got a tiebreaker over them. So they just need to tie those teams in the standings, not necessarily beat them. So it's going to be interesting to see. I think that Denver, if they win this next game against Minnesota, that's a big if, of course. If they win this next game against Sacramento, the next game against Golden State will be an interesting opportunity for them to basically have their one final major game. And if they win that one, it also gives Golden State a loss. If they we'll see what happens there. But I think if Denver goes 3-0 in their next 3 games, I think they shut it down after that. That wouldn't surprise me at all. Where they basically say, hey, we're gonna get to the playoffs here one way or another. We don't necessarily care about a top 3 seed. 2 seed is like Denver needs help, of course. Houston has a 2-loss advantage there, but Denver could kind of gain that back, and they would also gain a head-to-head tiebreaker if they beat Houston in that final game. So it's going to be very interesting to see how Denver handles this thing. If I had to predict it, OKC 1, Houston 2. I think Houston keeps the 2 seed. And I think Denver keeps the 3 seed. I think the Lakers stay at 4. It's kind of funny. This is going to go chalk. Memphis is at 5, but they're going to drop a little bit, and they might even drop into 6. Although Memphis and LA, those 2 teams could flip. Although if that's a 4-5 matchup, it doesn't necessarily affect the playoff bracket that much. It's just which of those teams is at home. And the real question, Clippers, Warriors, T-Wolves, which of those teams is most likely to actually be at the 6? Which of those teams is most likely to be at the 7 or the 8? If Denver were in the 2 seed, they would avoid any team that gets up to 6. If they're in the 3 seed, they avoid any team that gets to the 7-8. That's just how it works. So Denver has an opportunity to manipulate things from the top and the bottom because they are they're playing some of the teams that are in that situation in Minnesota and Golden State and even Sacramento. If Sacramento's not going to catch anybody above them, but it'll be fascinating. Remaining strength of schedule for some of these teams. Phoenix is by themselves at 1. The Lakers are at 2. Lakers have a tough schedule. Houston is at 5th toughest strength of schedule, and Denver is at 6th because they play all of these teams, and these teams care. In addition, Indiana will care. Like, they're a team that is going to be gunning for a playoff spot and a standings of their own. They are currently in the 4 seed. Detroit is at 5. Milwaukee is at 6. Indiana, I'm sure, would love to be at the 4 spot because then they get to not only face Detroit in the 5 seed and not have to deal with Giannis, but then they would also face Cleveland in the second round of the playoffs as opposed to Boston. And I'm sure that they would really, really, really appreciate that. So Indiana's going to be trying. Lots of these teams are going to be trying. So Denver's going to be in a tough spot. That's just how it is sometimes. Like, Denver's going to have to compete. Memphis has a tough schedule. They're the 10th toughest schedule. Golden State's 11th. The Clippers are at 13th. OKC's at 19th. And you scroll all the way down to Minnesota at 26th. They have the 5th easiest schedule, Minnesota does. So if you ask me to predict 6, 7, 8, I would probably say that Minnesota gets to 6. I'd probably say that Golden State and the Clippers are in that 7-8 play-in. And so they'll have to figure out who they are facing, and they'll compete there. But if Denver wants to avoid Minnesota, I think they either have to go up or down. I really do. And Nuggets fans are not going to like that. But being in the 3 seed for Denver, probably not going to be super exciting because they're going to need help. They have to either win and force Minnesota down, or they have to lose and Minnesota can be at the 6, but Denver could be at 4 and be okay. So again, wouldn't surprise me if Denver just decides to rest their guys. They won't say that they're hiding from anybody, but it just wouldn't shock me. All right. That's all. That's all I've got. Everybody, thank you for tuning into the show. Really, really appreciate it. It's going to be interesting to see how Denver handles their final 7 games. I hope they continue to rest. I don't think that they should be taking it too serious. They're going to make the playoffs, and that's the most important thing. Whether they are a 4 seed or a 6 seed or a 2 seed or a 3 seed, it shouldn't matter that much at this stage of the season. They're going to get in. The only team that they can't, that everybody's going to try to avoid is OKC. And for Denver, they have other factors that they have to take care of. But if they take care of themselves, they will be better off than just about anybody else because they've still got the best player in the world. They've got Jamal playing really well, and they've got a rotation that is starting to figure some stuff out. So it'll be interesting to see what happens. All right. Marco says nobody has won without a top 3 seed. Is that correct? Technically, yes. Dallas went to the NBA Finals last year as a 4 seed, so it is possible to go to the finals. Usually the teams that are not in the top 3 are just not good enough to compete at that level. But in this year, in these playoffs, I think it's a little bit of a different feeling. OKC, Boston, and Cleveland are clearly the top 3 teams in the NBA. They're clearly the 3 most likely teams to win the championship. But if you get past OKC, you just got to win 1 series against one of those teams. So can you do that as a 4 seed? Sure. I don't see any reason why not. All right. Everybody, that is going to do it for this episode of Pickaxe and Roll, brought to you by our good friends over at Bet On The Line and SCL Mortgage. Thank you so much for tuning into the show on this Saturday, abnormal time, of course, for the show. I've been pretty irregular here, really doing my best. The long season has definitely worn on me a little bit, so trying to power through. But we're going to have fun. We're going to have fun as the playoffs roll in, and it's going to be very interesting to talk about some of these games. And I'm curious to hear your thoughts. Thank you so much for tuning in. Please hit that like button, hit that subscribe button on the way out. I will talk to you guys very soon.